once I figured it out, the formula, it just took off. In the last 7 years, I've gone from a $4 million company to a $31 million company.
If you're investing, investors will.
The podcast for all things real estate investing.
So welcome back to another episode of Investor One-on-One, the podcast where we showcase the innovators transforming real estate and entrepreneurship across the country. Today's guest isn't just a marketing game, he leads it. He's the founder of Graphic Connections Group, a powerhouse print and marketing firm out of St. Louis that's been driving results for over 3 decades. From humble beginnings in his basement, he's built a multi-million-dollar direct response empire with 65 employees, global reach, and a track record that's earned his company a spot on the Inc. 5000 list. Through affiliated brands like REI PrintMail and MortgagePrintMail, he's helped thousands of real estate investors, agents, and lenders generate leads and close more deals using strategic, high-impact direct mail. Jeff Charlton, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on, man.
Thanks a lot, Or. Yeah, great. That demo, that intro was awesome, but I'm going to give you an update on that intro. I now have 75 employees in St. Louis. We're located in St. Louis, Missouri, and I've got another 20 overseas as part of our Done For You program. So I'm pretty close to 100 people working for us right now, and we continue to grow at a very fast rate.
Perfect. I love that. So let's start from your beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more about your backstory and what got you into the industry?
Well, I'm an engineer by training, a civil engineer. That's what my college degree is. But I realized before I went to college, going back all the way to I was 11 years old, I've always been an entrepreneur. And I started cutting lawns, and then one of my lawn jobs asked me to paint their house one time when I was 14 years old. And I didn't know anything about painting, but I did it, learned it, did a good job, and I decided that was a better gig than cutting lawns. So from the age of 14 through college, I had a summer painting company that grew very quickly to the point I had 12 guys. As I was a senior in high school, I had 12 guys working for me, including 4 of my football coaches. And then that got me through high school and college and provided money and also taught me how to be an entrepreneur. Even though I had a college degree and I was an entrepreneur, I decided to go work for corporate America for a couple of years for Procter & Gamble. But I very quickly realized that was not for me. Entrepreneurship was me. But I did get some good training. I learned the grass is not greener in corporate America. And so I got back into entrepreneurship, but I didn't want to be in the painting business. It was okay, but I want to do something else. So long story short, I had an opportunity to get into a small printing company as a salesman. And my plan, the guy was getting close to retirement. I was going to work for him for a couple of years, learn the business, and then buy his company when he retired and have my own printing company. And a couple of years into it, I realized he wasn't the guy I thought he was, and I didn't really want to do that deal. So I quit cold turkey, and I've been very successful. I learned how to sell printing, learned everything about it. I still have an engineering heart, so I'm very technical by nature, and I really became a student of printing. But I did very well in sales, so I was making a lot of money, and I gave it all up. I got divorced about the same time, and when you get divorced, it's never a good thing. So I went back to having no money and started with nothing. I had nothing to my name hardly, but me. So I started my basement back in 1992, starting Graphic Connections Group. That's correct. And I was a print broker back then, which meant that I bought and resold. I got the order first, and I found a manufacturing plant to make it, and I made a spread. I did that successfully for a few years, but we were all things to all people, meaning this is a key point about marketing. When in printing, I could do anything on paper and ink, even shirts, embroidery, ad specialties. Anytime anybody wants to put their logo on anything, we could do it. Well, that's great to say I can do anything, but it's not really something you can easily market. Because to say I can do anything in printing is not any kind of a hook that excites anybody. I knew I had to get into a niche, but I didn't know what niche. Well, I've always been an entrepreneur, and during that time period, I also invested in real estate as a sideline. And for me, it was just buying rental properties. And to me, it was just an investment. It wasn't an active business. But I knew real estate, and the more I got to know it, I realized real estate investors, they need leads to buy houses because they want to buy houses off market. And I realized that could be a niche we could get into. So long story short, right before the crash in 2008, I decided to start focusing on the real estate niche. And I met a guy named Kent Clothier who runs an organization called The Boardroom, which we're both in. And through him, we started kind of working to try to develop some direct mail for real estate investors. And it was a slow growth for about 5 years. But about 7 years ago, I sort of figured it out. And once I figured it out, the formula, it just took off. In the last 7 years, I've gone from a $4 million company to a $31 million company with 100 employees, and we're planning to do 40 to 45 million this year. And we continue to grow. I don't know I don't know where we're going to run out of growth. I have no idea what the upper limit is. But the secret to all that was identifying a niche and then really being the best you can be in that niche. And so in the United States, I feel by the way, Graph Connections Group's the name of my company, but we run a division called REI PrintMail, and that's the big division that focuses on real estate. And it was focusing on that real estate and being the best at that niche in the whole United States is what's gotten us to where we are. And that's the key. That's the key to any business. Find something that you can be the best at, and that you can go nationwide to. If you really want to scale, you got to go get outside your city. It's hard to scale within your city because it's limited to that city. When you can sell something and sell the same thing to this different people in different cities, then you have a formula that works for a city. You can transfer that entire formula to another city. That's what we do. And in
Great
direct mail,
tips.
I mostly focus on direct mail for real estate investors now. That's where all my growth comes from. And every city's different, but the similar yet. There's strategies that are similar, and then we find out what works in these different cities. And it's been great.
I couldn't
So
agree more. That's really well said. And as you said, like a niche is very, very important. Just knowing what you do and being consistent and, going all in on that. So I love how that was the point that made you scale from a 4 million to a 31 million business. And yeah, that's kind of following up to my next question. In today's digital heavy world, as we spoke before this, why does direct mail still work so well, especially for real estate professionals? And do you have any case studies of your business that you'd like to share with us?
well, I've been saying for years that if you're not using direct mail, as part of your overall comprehensive marketing plan, you're leaving money on the table. And what do I mean by that? What it means is in digital marketing, I know you're involved in digital marketing in PPL, and you're generating those PPL leads through digital means online, which means you're paying for ads or whatever you're doing to get people to click on something to raise their hand and say, I'm interested. So
Mhm.
that's great. There's a lot of people in real estate have good success with that. What I'm saying is, with that though, there are people, and I'm one of these people. I'm not, even though I understand digital, I'm not a guy that goes to Google to find something all the time. I'm more old school. So if a person is not digitally savvy, and by the way, in the real estate space, a very high demographic is old people, people that are either dying or moving out of their house for whatever reason. The house is old, it's not fixed up. That's a target for many, many investors. Those people are typically not digitally savvy. So they're probably not going to go to Google to find someone to buy their house, but they all go to their mailbox and they read their mail. So even if you're successful digitally and doing great, and a lot of people are, okay, because it's digital works. If a guy is not a guy that's going to go to Google, no matter how much money you spend, you will never get that guy. You'll never get that lead. But everybody goes to their mailbox. So you got a chance if you use mail. So what I recommend you do is you do it all. There's many different marketing things that you can do. For my company, we do that. We use digital, we use direct mail, we use cold calling, we use everything. Um, because people respond to different things in marketing. Marketing is all about, ultimately, the goal of any marketing effort is to be in front of someone often enough so when it's time for them to respond, they think of you first. That's all it is. So hitting them different ways is good too. Maybe you hit them online and you also hit them with mail so they start to recognize your name. And all of a sudden they say, hey, I heard REI print mail. Maybe I'll call those guys. And it might be the 15th touch that they see that they finally say it's time for me to call that guy. It's no different in real estate investing. Same thing.
I agree. I come from the tech world and we also thought the same, just being everywhere, no matter what it is, you want to get
Right.
to that person. You know what I mean? So I agree with you, Jeff, on that.
In terms of the
Uh,
case study, I don't have any one case study. I got hundreds of case studies. In general, most customers that do business with us and let us do what we're best at, let us follow our advice, generally have success. Um, any one particular person, I can give you some generalities. It's typical in direct mail. Depends on the city because it varies wildly from one city to the next. That has more to do with competition than anything. The more competitive an area is, the more difficult it is to use any marketing because you got more people all shooting at the same leads. There's only so many deals to be had in any one area. And the more people competing for those deals, the more the pie gets split up amongst more people. That's all it is. It's not that direct mail works better in some areas or another, or PPL. It's got to do with competition. Some areas are more competitive than others. In general, big cities are very competitive. Smaller towns are not so competitive. But it generally takes between $5,000 and $10,000 per deal in direct mail spend to get a deal in most areas. Every once in a while, we'll see somebody doing it for 3,000, but it's usually closer to 5,000 at least. And so if you make enough money per deal that you can afford to spend $5,000 to $10,000, then it makes sense. If you can't, if you don't make enough money per deal, then you got to think of something else. But I will tell you, almost everybody that uses direct mail consistently, and I mean consistently, they mail month after month or week after week, they just keep doing it. They generally speaking do well, and over time they do better because direct mail also has staying power, which means a postcard or a letter can sit on somebody's desk for months or years, and you can hear from somebody years later that you mailed to and says, "Okay, I'm ready to sell my house." That's something you don't get in digital marketing either. That's another benefit of direct mail. It's called staying power. So anyway, that's just
Sure.
kind of a general rule.
And in today's current market, based on your data and stats and all that, where do you see a lot of investors, your investors investing in or wanting to go in?
What do you mean, what area? Or I'm not
Yeah.
sure what the question is.
Yeah.
Uh,
What area?
well, we have a lot of people. I mean, a lot of the major cities are popular. Los Angeles, Dallas, Phoenix, those areas, the three most competitive areas in the United States. Most Miami, we're seeing a lot of work in Miami, but really it's all over the place. We have customers. We have about 2,000 active customers right now all over the United States in both small towns and small cities. We don't see a whole lot in like in New York City. I don't know if we have one single customer in New York City, and I never hear anybody talking about that. So there's some areas, that's probably one of them, that's just really, really tough. Probably we don't see it because investors have a hard time making any money there. Is probably why. But generally speaking, people can do it from everywhere. There's no. I will say that the Carolinas, we're seeing more and more people going to the Carolinas because they seem to do really well there. One of the biggest things, and this is true whether it's direct mail or any kind of marketing, you have to have an area where there's enough spread, whether you're a wholesaler or a fix and flipper or any other different models. You have to have enough spread from what you buy it and what you sell it at to make enough profit to justify your marketing spend. We hear most people that are successful make 20,000 or more per deal. If they can make that much, they can pretty much make it work with any method of marketing. If you're less than that, it gets tougher depending on, again, how much you spend. And if you're making less than 10,000 per deal, like it's really tough. Like in St. Louis, if you're wholesaling, it's pretty hard to make less than or more than 10,000 per deal. So the people that do that, they do more driving for dollars or more, sweat equity type of marketing to try to get those thinner deals. But pretty much anywhere, if you're fixing flipping, you can make a lot of money and you can justify marketing.
For sure. Can you tell us more about your operations and how direct mail works with you guys?
Well, first of all, we're in St. Louis, Missouri, which is right in the middle of the country. So that's a good place to mail from for us to operate nationwide. We do everything in-house. So we have the list in-house. We have the mail in-house. We actually have a production facility here. We go to the downtown post office in St. Louis and drop off the mail. So, but basically we do it from scoop to nuts. If you have data now, we have a data company and we have a direct mail company.
Mhm.
And in the data, we're what I call data agnostic. If you have data, there's a lot of good data providers in the United States. If you do business with one of those data providers and want to provide the list, that's fine. We're not going to argue with you. We support those guys with a lot of good data companies. If you don't, we also have a data company called REI Smart Data, and we can provide the data too. And when I say the data, the way we go about that, and no matter what list you pull from, we'll help you with this. The first conversation is where are you located and what is your avatar? It means what are you looking for? Are you a wholesaler? Are you a fix and flip? What does your ideal prospect look like? Is it 3 bedrooms, 2 baths? Is it an absentee owner? What's the price range you like to buy in? All those kind of things. Everybody has their own target market. So we figure that out first. Then what we do, because we mail right now 3 to 4 million pieces of mail a month all for real estate investors. We also track the data on a large percentage of that. So I know exactly who responds to what list, what mailer, everything. We use that data to advise our customers who may be in the same area and what is working for other people in that area. And then we use that as a starting point to try to get you off to a head start and what might work if you've never marketed in a particular area, if you've never used direct mail. And it's not an exact science. We know a lot, but we don't necessarily know it all. So there's filters. We talk about avatar. All these different data sources have filters, and you can actually apply filters to the list before you pull the list to try to identify what's called the most likely to sell records. That's what it's all about, is trying to identify who's the most likely to sell. Because one thing about direct mail, it's different than digital marketing. Digital marketing, often it's a click that generates the lead. So you're putting an ad out and someone clicks on that ad and then they're raising their hand and saying, okay, I might be interested in what you're offering. That is not exactly the same. And in digital marketing, you have a spend and you're still trying to target people, but ultimately it's kind of out there and you hope that they see you and they hope that they click. In direct mail, it's expensive to mail. So you want to really dial in who you want to mail to. You can't mail to the whole list. You can't mail to the whole United States because nobody can afford that. So you have to say, what is the most likely target that I want to mail to? And you do that with filtering the data with these different things. And on top of that, AI is really hot these days, and most data companies have some level of AI they can use as well. We have one as well. We call it Lucy, and it's an AI algorithm that we developed using actual response data from our mail that scores any list. So we can take any list, dump it into this algorithm. It's magic of AI. It uses 30 different demographic factors to somehow figure all out through the data who is most likely to sell on that list. It gives each record a score. And then we throw out the lower scores and we keep the higher scores. So if I have a list of, say, 10,000, we might throw out 4,000 of those records. We don't mail to them because those are least likely to sell out of that list. And the 6,000 we mail to that are most likely to sell. Doesn't guarantee they're going to do it, but it's just using both the filters and the AI to try to figure out what has the best chance of someone saying, okay, you got me, I'm interested in talking to you, I'm going to call you. So that's what we do. And then so we get a list, and then we look at the different mailers. And another thing we do, we're very innovative. One of the skills I have personally is designing unique mailers, kind of come up with new ideas. And in our industry, I've been the innovator for the last 10 years. Every major type of mailer that's being used now in the whole industry was pretty much designed by me. What's really popular these days is fake check mailers, where it looks like a check and there's an offer on it. I was the first guy that came up with that about 10 years ago, literally. Nobody started really using it until about 3 years ago, but it's been out there for 10 years. The Google Street View mailers, where you have a picture of the actual house from the Google image. I'm the guy that came up with that about 5 years ago. There's a bunch of postcards that have different nuances that I came up with. So unfortunately, our competition copies what we do, and then they put it out there, and I haven't done a very good job of protecting my intellectual property, but it's out there. But the point is, we're always coming up with new things. I'm testing about 15 new mailers right now, because no matter what, I always say, it doesn't matter what I think or what you think. It's what the market tells us. And we don't know what the market tells us until we put it out there. And so we do the best job we can to try to guess what we think the market's going to do, but still then we put it out there. We pay money to test with real mail and real lists, see what happens. And the stuff that tests well, we then tell our customers, hey, this stuff's working. You might want to try something new. Because no matter how good something is, it doesn't last forever. It runs its course, and then it doesn't work. 20 years ago, I heard the word yellow letters. That was the most popular thing. That was one of the first things that came out. I could say I did not invent that, but yellow letters were super hot. We don't hardly see anybody using yellow letters anymore because that sort of ran its course. And so anyway, that's one thing that we do, is we're always trying to push that leading edge and find out what is working now, what's the next new thing. And so if you do business with us, you get access to being on the leading edge of that. And I can tell you in the future, I am now really going out of my way to protect my intellectual property so people don't steal stuff. We're copywriting everything, and we're just really protecting. We're only releasing the new stuff to people that are actually doing business with us. You're not going to see it on our website that's public, because I don't want people to know unless they've agreed to basically pay us for our ideas,
Yeah. Well, I love all the innovation. Sounds amazing. And you are that direct mail guy, as you said. You started so many different ideas. You've been doing it for so long. In your opinion, what are some of the biggest mistakes investors are making with their mail campaigns, and how can they fix them?
Well, the biggest mistake people do is they're not consistent. By far, that's the biggest mistake. And it's not just direct mail, it's any kind of marketing. Marketing is a journey, not a destination. And I'm sure you see this in your business too. You have to establish a monthly marketing budget and just keep doing it. Now, you might tweak what you do specifically, but you got to keep doing it. I'm 100% in favor of, doing something, tracking the data, tracking the KPIs and adjusting based on what you see. But what a lot of people do is they stop. They'll say, all right, I'm going to try one campaign. I'll see what happens. And first of all, one campaign, and when I say campaign, for a lot of people, that means one mail drop. Let me define some terms. A campaign, what I call a campaign, is a series of mail drops over a period of time. And we like to recommend for people to give it at least 3 months of regular marketing before you even begin to evaluate if something's working or not. If you try to do it quicker than that, you are not really doing a good job of evaluation because you have to have enough volume to have a statistically valid result. In direct mail, really, it's all marketing. You need at least 5,000 pieces mailed per idea, whether it be a list or a mailer, to even remotely decide if that was any good or not. And a lot of people don't mail that much to start with. So that's another mistake they make is they don't have big enough numbers to make decisions. They might mail 2,000 and they say, oh, I got a 2% response on that. That was awesome. We're going to scale it up to 20,000. Well, 2% of 2,000 is only 4. Okay, I think that's right. Is that right? 2,000 times 20. Oh, sorry, 40. 40. Okay, the math right. That's 40 leads. Okay. Well, that's good, but just because you get 2,000 is not a big enough sample size, you can't assume that going to 20,000, you're also going to get 2%. It just doesn't work that way. Now, if you went the other way, if you did 20,000 and got 2%, then you could probably go to 40,000 and assume that it's probably going to be a scalable number you could count on. So you just have to have enough volume for the percentage to mean something. So that's all kind of the same answer for you just have to do it regularly. Don't give up too soon. The second big mistake they make, and we see this more than the first, is that people want to get the cheapest thing they can get. They want to get the cheapest list, the cheapest mailer, and they think if they save a little bit of money in the front end, that money's going straight in their pocket, so they're better off. Problem is the people that give out the cheap mail, and in our world, there's two types of mail houses. There's people that specialize in real estate investing, which is someone like us, and we have a couple of other competitors that do the same thing. And there's also just regular mail houses that are in every city in the United States that they know how to process mail. They can get it out, and they're always really cheap, but they don't know anything about real estate investing. They don't know about the data. They don't know about the mailers. They'll just, yeah, we can do that letter for 4 cents or whatever their number is. They're always cheap. The local mail houses are always cheaper than us and the people that specialize in real estate. And the reason why is because they're not providing the extra knowledge and expertise that what I'm talking about right now, because they don't know it. So yeah, they're cheaper. So let's say you do 10,000 pieces of mail and you can find a guy that's 10 cents cheaper. So you're saving $1,000 on that mail piece. Okay, you're $1,000 better off right now. But if that mail doesn't work, if you're left to figure everything out and you don't really know what you're doing, because those mail houses like that, they don't know what they're doing. They're waiting for you to give them the list and you to tell them what mailer to mail. And if you don't know, it may or may not work. So yeah, it's great. You save $1,000, but if your mailer totally bombs, you threw away the rest of the money you spent. As opposed to you go with somebody that costs 10 cents more, but they give you the correct advice and the correct list and the correct mailer to get a much better response. You pay for that 1,000 plus way more. You get one extra deal in a campaign. And if you're making an extra 20,000 per deal, one extra deal pays for 10 or 20 different $1,000 savings. So it's absolutely, what they call it, penny wise and pound foolish. Don't do that. Do business with people that know what they're doing and give you good advice. And I can tell you in this industry, there's nobody that does what we do in terms of the data. But there are some competitors that folks in real estate, but they're not tracking the data like we are. They're not innovating like we are. They're not doing what we do. We really do, generally speaking, get better results for our customers than our competition. And why? We know that because they will leave us to be cheaper often, and they come back because they didn't get the results, and they come back, and the results we get way more than pay for the fact we cost a little more. And I'm not going to lie to you, we cost a little more. We are more, and we're more because it costs money to do everything I'm talking about. You can't. People that are cheap have to cut corners somewhere, and they cut corners at all different levels. They might have cheaper materials. They don't have enough employees. Whatever, you know. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You cannot get expertise and quality and service and cut corners. It just doesn't work that way. So anyway, that's two things. To summarize, don't get cheap and be consistent. That's the two big mistakes.
For sure. And let's talk a little bit more about the first one. Let's say there's a newer investor with a limited marketing budget. What's your best advice for that
Well,
investor to get the
if you
most
don't have the
benefit?
money, you don't have the money. I get that. Okay. And we face that all the time. Do what you can do. It's always a numbers game. So if let's say you only have two, I will say if you don't at least have a couple $1,000 a month, you're not going to be able to, direct mail is not going to work. I mean, it might work, but it might take you 6 months to get one deal. So you got to have at least enough money to get some kind of volume. Generally speaking, again, there's a million variables. It's generally speaking going to cost you somewhere between 70 cents and $1 per mailer in direct mail to do mail. So if you have $2,000 and let's say you got 70 cents as your number, you're going to get about 3,000 pieces of mail. So, and I can tell you right now, response rates nationwide, I'm sorry, that's my phone ringing. It'll stop in a minute. Come on, stop. Can you hear? Is that
You can't
distracting
hear.
you? Anyway, oh, you can. Okay. Um, let's say you make a 3,000 pieces of mail. Again, it varies from one area to the next wildly, but our nationwide response rate average right now is just under 1%. Meaning, so if you mail 3,000 pieces of mail, it's going to be about 30 leads. So if you can close a deal in 30 leads, then you got a deal, and that worked out to be good. But if you can't, and I can tell you our numbers show that most beginners take between 40 and 60 leads to close a deal. That's the numbers we see. It's because they're not good at closing. They don't really, they don't know what they're doing very much. So it just takes them more. And so it might take you 2 months to get that first deal at that level. But if you're trying to do $500 a month, it might take you 6 months because there's just not enough volume. So when I say to people, I realize the one problem in real estate investing is anybody can start a real estate investing company tomorrow. It doesn't cost hardly any money. It doesn't cost you anything to go driving for dollars and drive around, other than gas, to drive around and look for people that might want to sell their house or go knock on their door. So if you have the willingness to go do that sweat equity, absolutely, then you can do that. But if you're looking to spend money, you have to invest. If you look at a franchise in America, and there's hundreds, probably thousands of different franchises. In fact, my son has a buddy who's about to start a fence franchise, building fences in people's yards. And his buy-in is $100,000. Okay. Well, he doesn't have $100,000. So they have financing available, and his dad's helping co-sign for his loan. And he's getting a loan for $100,000 just to start the business. And that doesn't include marketing or anything. That's just opening the doors. I don't know what he's going to have to spend to market, but it's going to be money. So point is, you don't hear too many real estate investors going out and getting a loan for $100,000 to start a real estate investing business. But if they did, and then they invested some money in marketing and they knew what they were doing, they'd probably be successful. But it's just not typically what we talk about. People are usually starting with nothing. And, either got to buy the marketing or you got to do sweat equity. It's really your only two choices. There's nothing wrong with sweat equity. That's what I did when I started. I had no money. So I made cold calls myself. That's what I did to start. I didn't pay for marketing. And my first 3 years, all I did is make cold calls.
And as
It
you
was
said,
hard, but it worked,
it's a numbers game.
Yep.
For sure. So, you've been in this industry for a while, especially in marketing, and we spoke a little bit about AI, but what marketing trends are you seeing in 2025 and further on that investors need to be paying attention to?
Well, AI is the hottest thing. That's all you hear about these days, AI all over the place. And there's all kinds of people, not just in this industry, in every industry, coming up with the latest, greatest thing. So no question, AI is going to change our world, and it's already changing our world. And there's a lot of cool things about it. Again, that AI thing we talked about, that's definitely helping people get better results in mail. So it is working. Um, but it's old school sometimes is good. I mean, you're in the digital space. Um, that hadn't really changed. I mean, you pay-per-click marketing, which, whether it's Google or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be, YouTube, it's still pay-per-click. Your people are being presented with some digital ads and they're clicking and you pay for it when they click. Direct mail's been around forever, still is around forever. The post office did a study a few years ago that says that even with all the digital marketing, 92% of the people still go to their mailbox themselves and read their mail themselves. And they might read it over their trash can, but they still read it. And also, they did a study that the younger generation loves direct mail because they're all glued to their phones and that's all they do. When someone writes them a letter in the mail and it's got their name on a piece of paper, they love that, okay, because it's way more personal. So they're reading it also. So it hasn't changed. I don't see this industry changing that much with all the latest technology because ultimately people still got to live somewhere. And no matter what happens to the economy or trends, people are going to move. They're going to get old. Houses are going to change hands no matter what. Sometimes they change hands faster than other. Like right now, like I just heard in the last couple of days, suddenly prices are coming down, and we went from having an inventory shortage to all of a sudden now in some areas they have an inventory glut. It just happened like in the last few weeks. What changed? I don't know. Who knows why it changed? Is it interest rates? Is it the economy? Is it something they're doing in the political environment? Who knows? But no matter what, houses are still going to move, and real estate investors are still going to invest. They still ultimately have to find a house that they can buy it wholesale and have enough margin to make a profit, whether they fix it up or wholesale it. So I just don't see, I think it's old school stuff still works. Keep mailing, keep paying for marketing, keep knocking on doors, cold calling's a risk, by the way. I will tell you, and I've got a podcast I did with a TCPA attorney recently that's on YouTube that just talked about the legalities of cold calling. And there's a lot of investors still cold calling. And if you're buying a list and you're skip tracing the list and cold calling, I'm telling you, you're taking a legal risk. And there are lawyers out there specializing in going after real estate investors doing that. And there are people paying massive fines. I have a customer that paid $1 million for cold calling, and it cost him 300 grand in legal fees on top of that to get to the $1 million fine. And he was looking at a $15 million fine. There's a penalty of $1,500 per call if you don't do cold calling right. Now, there is a way you can do it right, but you have to get explicit permission to talk to people. And I can tell you right now, buying a list and skip tracing it is not right. There's no way you can do that legally. You can mitigate your risk by scrubbing against the DNC list, that's a do not call list, but that still doesn't make it legal. It just means that you're less likely to get caught. But again, and that's another thing about direct mail and what you're doing. There's no laws against that. Okay. So you can do that all day long. You're not going to get in trouble by anybody.
Great points. So you've
Yeah.
worked with thousands of businesses and investors. What separates the ones that scale from those that stall?
Well, the people that scaling, first of all, the people that scale, it's a full-time business for them. They're not doing it part-time. You can't really scale doing it part-time. Real estate investing is a business. I'm not saying most people that start out doing it part-time while they have another job. And then at some point when they want to get serious about it, they quit their job and it becomes a full-time business for it. So that's the first thing. If you want to scale, you got to make it your full-time business. And then secondly, it's about investment. You have to invest in marketing. You cannot scale without investing in marketing, period. Because you ultimately, if you want to get more deals, you got to get more leads. And the only way you get more leads is to get more marketing. And it becomes paid marketing. There's no way you're going to scale with trying to do driving for a dollar. That's impossible because you only got so many hours in the day. So you have to then decide, I'm going to invest so much money in marketing. You also have, here's another point too I haven't made, I haven't talked about, but one of the things we have as part of our done for you system is we have a call team where we answer incoming calls for mail that we do. Now, this is optional, but we have 165 customers right now that do this. And that's our full, we call it our REI Pro service, where we do the mail and we answer the phones. We don't close the deals. We just answer the incoming calls and we vet the leads. We ask them a series of 10 questions to see if they qualify as what we call a qualified lead, which means somebody who's interested in actually selling their house and they want to talk to you about that. So you have to have a way to make sure you answer the phones properly. And what we found out from our own statistics, because we track not all our mail yet, although I'm working on that, but we have a large portion of our mail, we track statistics. So one of the statistics we track is whether the phone gets answered or not, by even if they're answering their own phones. We discovered about 8 months ago that 55% of the calls that come in for investors that answer their own phones do not get answered. And a secondary statistic is that people that miss their calls have a very low track record of following up on missed calls. Well, think about this. Missing 50, that's over half the calls. If you miss over half the incoming calls that you paid to generate, how smart is that? Not smart. Okay. So, and when I talk to investors about this, they will not deny that it's true because most investors aren't big operations. Even if they have a staff, it's usually a small company with one or two or three people. They're working their butt off. Well, even if you have people to answer the phone, they can't do it. First of all, they're usually only working 8 hours a day. So if they're not answering, once they're not in the office, they're not answering. And even when they are in the office, they're on the phone a lot, talking to people. But if you're talking to somebody else, you're not going to answer the phone. My point is, if you don't answer the phone properly, that's part of marketing. You got to have a system to make sure your calls get answered so you don't lose any leads. Anybody that calls in, you got to make sure you capture that lead and at least talk to them. So we have a system to do that if you don't do it. That's another talk about scaling. The people that scale make sure they pay money for marketing and then they make sure they maximize that marketing by handling those leads properly. That also includes follow-up, okay? It's rare that you close a deal on one call. Usually there's a process of following up and working that lead. If you don't have a system to do that, you're going to lose, you're not going to get most of those deals. Follow-up's huge. This is nothing new. In sales, my entire career, there's a term, the fortune is in the follow-up, and that is 100% true. I don't care what you're selling. If you don't follow up relentlessly, you are not going to have a high closing rate.
I agree, especially in this industry. So
Yeah.
talking more about scaling, you've definitely scaled your business into a huge empire. But if you had to start over from scratch with just $10,000 and no contacts, how would you rebuild today?
Well, the first thing I did, there weren't masterminds. I started essentially 40 years ago. My company's 33 years old now when I started, but I've been in the industry for 40 years. There was no such thing as a mastermind back then. There weren't coaches. There was none of that. There were business coaches, they call them consultants, not coaches, but there was nothing like there is today. So I didn't figure that out until I met Kent Clothier, which was about 15 years ago. The first thing I would do is pay money to get some advice from somebody that really knows what the heck they're talking about. They can advise me in what I'm trying to do, my industry. And then we're talking real estate. So there's tons of real estate coaches out there. We have a bunch of them. We've got about 50 affiliates that work with us, and they all are coaches. They're all teaching people how to flip houses and make money. And so that's the first thing. Get educated from somebody who's already been there. If you try to do it yourself, I've always been a do-it-yourself or figure it out on my own. And I did figure it out. It worked, but it took me, I joke that it took me 27 years to figure out how to be successful. I did okay up until 7 years ago. I always made money, but I wasn't getting rich and I wasn't setting any records. All of a sudden, we're setting records now because I finally figured it out, but that was because I had to figure it out on my own. If I'd have got some coaching 20 years ago, I probably would have figured it out 20 years ago. So that's the
And
biggest thing. Yeah, go ahead.
those are great tips. I love
Yeah.
that. Thanks for sharing. And coming to our last question, you've been through so much and you've experienced so many things in this industry. You're connected with a lot of people in this industry. And, today you've had such a great talk with you and you've been very motivational. Is there a quote, or phrase or piece of advice that's had the biggest impact on your business journey?
100%. I go back to the beginning. When I first started my business in my basement, I had nothing. And we were just a printer. There's nothing. Printing's an old industry. It's been around for 100 years. So there was no innovation. I didn't have any secret sauce. I didn't have anything. I was just a guy selling printing. And my printing wasn't any better than anybody else's. But, and this was the big but, I had a lot of confidence in my own personal ability to do a better job for my customers, both from a service standpoint and I felt that I was good at solving problems and just doing a better job. So I would tell people, I would just be honest with them. I would tell them, look, my printing's not any better than anybody else. What is better is me. So I'm going to make two promises. I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do 100% of the time, and I'm going to return all my phone calls in 24 hours or less. That was it. That was my entire offering. But I lived by it. I didn't just say it. I lived by it. And the 24 hours or less thing was really, I never took 24 hours. It was more like 1 hour or less. Okay. Back then we just had cell phones beginning. I had a box phone. You're too young to even know this, but they came in these big boxes you carried around. It was this giant thing, and I had one of those. And I had pagers. So when I wasn't in the office to answer the cell, if I had an answering service, and I'm following my own advice going way back then. I had someone answer the phone 24 hours a day when I couldn't answer it, and they would page me with an actual message on my pager that said, "Call Joe Blow. Here's what he said." And I would instantly pick up my box phone and call that guy right away as soon as I could. If I wasn't on the phone, I'd call him right away. But anyway, my point is, the one thing is be responsive and be a man of your word. Our world, almost nobody is a man of their word or a woman of your word. Almost nobody does that. How many friends do you have, or family or business acquaintances, that will say they're going to do something and they don't do it? Okay. It's most of them. Okay. Probably 95% of the people tell me they're going to do something, do not deliver on what they say. And that might be, they said, I'll call you tomorrow. Let's go out to lunch. Let's go play golf, whatever. They say it and they don't do it. They don't follow up. If you do what you say you're going to do, we have a sign on our wall in my conference room, all over our building, those two things. And I train every single employee. This is the most important thing of everything we do. If you relentlessly live by, I do what I say I'm going to do, everything else falls into place.
Those are very wise words.
Yes.
I really love that.
Well, there's one other thing. I'm going to say one other thing and I'm done. Communication's a second thing. Every problem we have, and that relates to communication, because when you do what you say you're going to do, you're communicating. But more importantly, communication is the source of every problem you have in your life, whether it be business or personal. Okay. When you're arguing with somebody or whatever, it's always because there's a lack of communication. When you tell somebody in business and they come to a different conclusion, it's always communication. All right. You are responsible. When you communicate with somebody, you are responsible to make sure that person understands what you're saying. And a lot of people don't want to take that responsibility. So you have to be astute enough that when you tell somebody something, that they're actually understanding what you're saying. And if they're not, you got to say it in a different way till you finally are sure that they understand exactly what you say. And that's so important. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you got to say, repeat that back to me. Are you sure you're getting what I'm putting out? Because I'm telling you, if you get that mastered, one example of that is in printing, delivery is always, hey, when do you need this to be done? Well, people say, I need it done Friday. Okay. Well, for most people, they say, okay, Friday's great. All right. Well, wait a minute. What does that actually mean, Friday? Does that mean by 10 o'clock Friday morning? Does that mean end of business on Friday? Because sometimes that does matter. If they think Friday, if they just say Friday, and I'm thinking Friday's end of business, and they're thinking Friday morning. Well, I could deliver on time, and by end of day Friday, and think I did my job. They're happy, and they're pissed off because in their mind, they thought Friday at 10 o'clock. Well, so you got to clarify that. So I learned many years ago to define specifically what that delivery date means, make sure we're on the same page. Well, it's true of everything. So communication is huge.
Yeah, communication is definitely the key for business and personal. To finish this off, let's talk about business and personal again. What's next for you on those levels?
Well, I'm 62 years old, and people always ask me, when are you going to retire? And my answer is, I don't think I'm ever going to retire. I I still love the game. I don't know. I say the game because it is kind of a game. I love trying to see what I can push in the business. And I've reached a point in my life where I feel like I have a lot of wisdom to share. That's why I'm doing this call with you. And I enjoy sharing that wisdom. So I hope that I can help somebody else that's younger than me shortcut the process of being successful. So, and I love coming up with new ideas and testing the ideas and seeing if they work. And so I'm gonna try to take my company to, I don't know what. I set an arbitrary goal of 100 million. I have no idea if we're gonna reach that or not, but I think we can, but I'm gonna see if I can do it. So I don't know. It's just we keep pushing.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your story today and wisdom. It's been a pleasure having you on Investor 101. If our listeners want to connect with you and learn more about graphic connections or explore REI PrintMail, what's the best way they can find you?
Well, REI PrintMail, go to the website, reiprintmail.com. And on that website, you can look at our stuff and you can book a call. And we offer a free 15-minute coaching call for anybody to just click the button and schedule the time. And all we're doing on that, we're not going to hard close you. You're going to be talking to one of our direct mail marketing coaches. We're not going to teach you how to close deals. That's not our game. We're going to teach you how to be successful in direct mail marketing. That's what we do. And we will assess whether or not we are a fit for you. We'll ask you a bunch of questions, find out what you need, figure out if we're a fit. If we are a fit, then we'll start that process of taking you down the road of trying to set up some campaigns. If we're not a fit, it's okay too. I get that. We realize success in marketing relationships are about long-term relationships. So we realize it does us no good to hard close anybody. You got to feel comfortable. We're all about win-win things, and win-win means you win and we win. Okay. And so if we can make something work that way, it's great. If we can't, that's okay too. That's it.
Sounds good. And to everyone watching and listening today, thank you for tuning in. Stay connected for more interviews with the nation's top investors, marketers, and business leaders. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you.